Now, here's one that increasingly seems to get your goat. Being told by someone at the end of a phone line, in a shop or providing a service that they can't help you because of COVID. According to new research, customers are fed up with being told they're getting poor service for that very reason. Firms are being accused of using the pandemic as an excuse for long waits on the telephone or late deliveries. The UK Institute of Consumer Services said. It says that consumers were initially tolerant of delays and other issues as businesses fought to cope with the crisis. But it said a blanket excuse was no longer sufficient. Well, Kate Hardcastle is a consumer affairs journalist. Kate, welcome to the programme. Is this something that you're finding is being increasingly used across the board by people when they do say they can't do something? They're simply blaming COVID?
Absolutely. Consumers want service. They absolutely do want to be dealing with organisations that are going to deliver the goods and deliver them with the service package around it that they've promised. And it doesn't really matter where in the value chain that is. It doesn't matter whether this is the discounters or the premium products. A lot of organisations have endured some challenges due to the very big way in which business has changed. But then as normal life has resumed in a new way, a lot of businesses are still seeming to carry forward that excuse for what I would class as just shoddy service. And consumers are quite rightly frustrated about it. Many of us have adapted the way we're living. We've changed the things that we're doing, and we don't understand why these businesses can't catch up.
Do you think that a lot of this, of course, is people getting used to it, not just us as consumers, but those providing the services having to get used to new practices like click and collect. But do you think that some firms have overstretched themselves as well?
That's right. There seems to be a tolerance for about 3 to 6 months, which would make sense as organisations, first and foremost, were dealing with the health and safety of their teams, their workforce, their customers, and also a lot of them were adapting, if they weren't already online, to moving the majority of their products online. And therefore, things had to work differently. I think there was a huge amount of tolerance shown both ways. Supermarkets stepped up, joining forces together to say they would feed the nation. People understood that they might not get delivery grocery slots, and we're trying to stand back and let people who needed those grocery delivery slots go to the forefront. I think there was a lot of tolerance. But when I started analysing some of the big stories I was hearing from very big brands starting to struggle with customer service complaints around September, October, what seemed to have happened was consumers have said, well, OK, we've been doing this for quite a while now, and actually we just need you to get on with the day job. And I think there's one thing that kind of summarises how people feel. If the businesses are able to take the cash, then they need to deliver the service. So I think if they've managed to get the payments up and working, what the customer thinks is, well, they've taken my money, so I want the rest of the delivery here. Absolutely.
And I'd imagine that intolerance will increase as lockdown is eased and we get back to some sort of normality. People will expect things like customer service to improve.
If not get even better than it was prior to the pandemic. You know, we've got technology that's ramped up at such a pace. We've seen brands using social media much more to talk directly to customers. As you've said, we've seen new brands using services like click and collect, but certainly much more inspiring thinking from retail and service organisations in how they can serve meals in boxes. You think about all the ways we've seen new businesses emerge. This has been a time for creativity because that's what happens when we have these huge challenges. But I think with that, we've got to also see as consumers a much better offer of service. Can we get 24/7 service? Because some of us are shift workers. Should there be someone on the end of the line? And certainly not pushing forward an excuse of COVID as the reason things haven't been done. We've all been living with it for a long time now, and I think what we're seeing is this hope that we will get a better outcome with the businesses we work with because of it.
Well, the UK Institute of Customer Service said the number of complaints about service, poor service in the last 6 months was at the highest level since 2009 with its survey of 10,000 people. Now, it said the sectors with the biggest issues were transport, local public services like GPs, councils and public services, police services. But I've found, and there is a flip side to this, isn't there? Some of these places like GP surgeries, you get an appointment at a fixed time, and sometimes that is better than actually turning up, isn't it?
I think that there has been a change in the way that we think. I think on the side of the retailers and the businesses as well, there could also be that factor that some of us have got a bit more time on our hands to complain, or it is easier to complain, or maybe it's been something that's been an outlet for our frustration. I think some of that's happened too. But certainly, I think what we see in our organisations trying to work how they feel it's best to serve, what suits them better, and how they feel they can perhaps restructure those teams. A lot of organisations are talking about restructuring cost bases, changing the way that they're working. So I would imagine a lot of that automation is going to come to practice.
And a lot of this is down to training, isn't it? You know, when you're dealing with somebody on the end of a phone line, it's how they speak to you, it's how they explain their position. And if they simply have it's because of COVID, it's because of COVID. If they're coming back with that rather than a much more plausible reason, then you're going to get cheesed off, aren't you?
20 years ago, we always used to talk about the best thing you could do in customer service is to be human, act human. Because if you try and be defensive, if you try and make excuses right at the outset, there's nothing worse than stirring someone up and making them more frustrated, because all that's going to lead to is a more challenging situation for anyone. And I think that rule still applies. And I think, therefore, where we've got technology starting to take over some of the customer service and these chatbots and things, that does drive people absolutely mad, and people want to speak to a human being. So I think organisations certainly need to work on the human touch over the next few years as they start to say, yes, that did interrupt us. We were busy because of it. Our work did change because of it, but we're here to help now. How can we remedy it?
Brilliant. You are a human being. Thanks for speaking to us. That's Kate Hardcastle, Consumer Affairs journalist. Thanks for joining us here on BBC Radio Wales.